Hello, 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 Mosaic Souls. Hey, Mosaic Souls, this is Rachael Alexander, artist and Mosaic Soul mentor, aka spiritual teacher with flair. And today I wanted to come to you with a topic. I'm very random with my videos, but I just kind of press the record button when I'm feeling inspired nowadays. Um, but yeah, I wanted to talk about the evolution of human consciousness. And I wanted to talk about it from the perspective of not only what's kind of going on in the world, but mostly about just how we as a human species have evolved, de evolved, and now are re evolving, right? So if you have studied any true history, you would know that, back in ancient times, even in Egyptian times, or if you want to call it Kemetic times, there was a part of our society back then that was highly evolved beings. They already knew and were connected to the earth, to the planet, and they had such high levels of spiritual wisdom that we as a society are just now starting to embark on. So not only were they technologically advanced in certain ways, but they were spiritually advanced. And so from that, like the whole fall of Egypt, and even before that, like Atlantis and all that other stuff, and then to this sort of dark ages, and then sort of, the Renaissance and all this just history in general, we've gone from this sort of like high level of society in one part of the world to like this de-evolution where the human consciousness has sort of dipped down, and we moved further away from the earth. We moved from further away from our divinity. We moved further away from just connecting to that which we truly are, right? And so, in that sort of like de-evolution, we're now starting to come back up, right? Like the planet is shifting, our consciousness is shifting, and we're now starting to come back up into a new stage of evolution. Welcome. Feel free to say hi. Hey, Angie. Hey, girl. What's up? Oh, I am in Boca Raton. What's your name, Internet Savior? I don't know your name. Feel free to say hi and tell me your name. But yeah, so we are like in this new stage of evolution where we went from this high level of spiritual consciousness and connection to the earth to this sort of dark ages and industrialization and all this sort of period of time. Iyami am I spelling that? Am I saying that right? Iyami, Iyami or Iyami? Hey girl, what's up? Yeah. Hey Anthony. Okay, nice. Good. I'm glad I didn't butcher your name. Yami. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we're in this like new stage. Yami. Gotcha. So we're like in this new stage of consciousness, right? Where we're kind of tapping back into like our ancient wisdom. I am doing very well. I keep interrupting. But I'm doing very well, Angie. Nice to see you. I'm so glad to like actually put faces to names, or well, names to faces, and start talking to you guys. Um, but if I want to invite you guys to something free that I just launched, if you guys are interested. As always, flow with what feels good and let go for a second. But anyways, I am sitting here in Boca Raton, and this neighborhood, and it just has this beautiful kind of scenery. I like taking sort of my morning jog. But anyways, I felt inspired to talk about, just the consciousness of the planet and where we're shifting to. And so basically, in a nutshell, we're coming back into a higher level of consciousness that we once had back in ancient, like Egyptian times and ancient Kemetic times, right? Where we weren't only just technologically advanced, but we are also spiritually advanced. And what does that mean, being spiritually advanced? On a human playground, we come up with all these different labels, and we sort of like woo-woo-wise everything. And I'm such a wooer. Like I can talk, spiritual language all day long. That's just where the playground I like to play on. But in general, being spiritually advanced means being connected to the planet, being connected to who we are beyond just this sort of human suit that we're living in, right? And so it's so interesting, like the time that we are living in, because now you're seeing all these sort of shifts and changes that's going on the planet. Just everything that's going on, where these sort of circumstances are bringing us to new levels of consciousness, and we're being asked and being questioned of whether or not our systems and our ways of doing things in the world are still working. Like, I have a tendency to look at the positive. It's just the way that my mind works. But in this time where we're all being asked to stay home and all this other stuff, like this moment in time where we're finally saying, is this whole hustle and bustle way of living, this fast paced way of living, really healthy for our planet? Is the way that we're doing things on the planet really healthy for us long term, for our future generations? So there's so much that's going on the world that we're starting to awaken out of, right? All this sort of like greed and this sort of, selfishness and disconnection from the planet and disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from each other. And so I wanted to talk about just simply like bringing it down to like an individual level, right? And when I talk about human consciousness, I don't want to talk about it as though like, oh, you're doing it wrong, or like, oh, we as a human, species need to evolve. It's just sort of like, if you think of a child, right? And their growth period, like the child goes from baby to adolescent to child to teenager and all that stuff, right? And I feel like that's what we are as a human species, right? Like, we went from like this kind of high level of already being at adult phase to back to being babies, right? When like the dark ages and this whole industrial revolution and slavery and all that stuff that still is kind of going on in the world, right? And now we're like coming into like adolescence phase, right? We're coming into this phase of starting to like discover the world and really discover who we truly are beyond just being human, right? And the way that I feel like this is really coming into like perspective on a human, like on an individual level, is our thoughts, right? Like, we're becoming super aware of the power that we have with our thoughts, and we're becoming super aware of the fact that we aren't only our thoughts and we aren't only our emotions, right? We're in this phase of recognizing that our monkey minds, like I like to call it, our sort of crazy minds that go off on tangents and, do their thing, is part of that sort of like unknowing of who we are. It's a part of that like sleep phase where we're like disconnected from the fact that we're actually souls having this human experience, that we're actually spirit beings in human bodies, right? And so I think it's a part of that journey that that our planet is going into, and this sort of consciousness. And so we're shifting into this like sort of adolescent phase where we're waking up and we're recognizing that we're connected to each other, we're connected to the planet, and that there's a better way of doing things on the planet. There's a better way of living on the planet. And we as a world society, global society, are starting to awaken up to that, I remember just having conversations with people who would just never even talk about like, just spiritual stuff or just, compassion or love or joy or freedom. It was all about the hustle and bustle and making that money. You got to make that money and any means necessary, and you see a lot of corporations that are kind of starting to go under because they're not having that win-win connection with themselves and their employees. And so I feel like the wave of the future is going to be where companies and organizations and systems are only going to survive if we come into that oneness consciousness, where we're moving beyond just our own little egoic mind, our own little me mindset, where it's all about me, and we're coming into this we mindset. We're coming into this collective consciousness where we're like, how can I do things in the world that not only have benefit me, but benefit others, right? So if I do something in the world, it's like a ripple effect. You recognize that your actions have a ripple effect. And it's not about being like self-conscious and being overly, I was going to say overly accommodating, not accommodating, being overly, like an over giver. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like when you're being an over giver, but in a sense it's like a selfish way of giving, where you're giving but the person doesn't really want to receive, and you're just giving because it makes you feel good. But it's about like that equal exchange, that win-win situation where it's giving and reciprocity, right? That equal reciprocity that's going on. And that's the a stage of evolution that I feel like we're shifting into, right? It's a slow and gradual shift. There's a lot of companies that still is going to be on that, win-lose sort of way of thinking. And, there's a lot of companies that aren't going to, give their employees or their workers, any benefits or any like just sort of win-win solutions. But then there's also going to be a lot of new stuff that's going to be coming, like people, the fact that we're working from home, the fact that we don't have to like slave and sit in 2 3 hour traffic. I remember when I used to have my old my old full-time job, it was like at least 2 hours going one way just to get to my job and then 2 hours just to get back home. And it was just really it's economic slavery, really like a different form of economic slavery, really. And so I feel like we're starting to come out of that. A lot of people are, going online and starting new businesses. A lot of people are figuring out new solutions and new ways of doing things. We're reconnecting to our bodies, we're reconnecting to the earth, we're reconnecting to so much, and that's really just really what I wanted to talk about, just the stages of human evolution. And the one thing that really like the one thing that I really wanted to like mention was a lot of times when spiritual teachers talk about like evolution, human evolution and consciousness, they talk about it in like a browbeating type of way, as though, you know, you're reprimanding a child for doing something wrong. And I just don't agree with that way of like teaching. It's just not how I agree with teaching. I feel like the reason why we've been in this sort of sleep phase is because that's what we signed up for. You know what I mean? I don't feel like anything that we've experienced up until this point is quote unquote wrong. It's just a stage in our evolution. It's a stage of our journey. Like you wouldn't reprimand a child for falling off the bicycle or for falling down when they're taking their first steps, right? Like I feel like that's where we are as a human species. But our souls, of course, are way more advanced than our human selves. It's now that our human species is starting to tap back into that infinite wisdom that our souls already naturally have, right? So I feel like that's the interesting, evolution that we're coming into is recognizing that our monkey minds and our thought processes that continue to go on and that we kind of have an attachment to or have a just unknowing like belief in when you are like so attached to your thoughts that you think you are your thoughts, right? Or you're so attached to your emotions and your personality characteristics or personality trait that you think you are your personality versus going beyond. I feel like that's the stage of evolution we're coming into where as a human species we're recognizing that there's like just different stages of consciousness. It's like one where you're like super sleep and you just think that you're human and that's it. And then there's the second stage where you're just kind of like I'm a I'm a spirit having a human experience, but you don't truly live it that way. You're like there's a little bit of you that believes it, but you kind of have a little bit of spiritual experiences here and there. And then you just kind of go back and forth between sleep and awakefulness, but you're mostly asleep. And then like there's this third stage of consciousness that I feel like we're shifting into where we're staying predominantly um, awakened to who we truly are. And we're staying predominantly awakened to the fact that we are souls having this human experience and that these human suits are simply that. They're human suits, their personality, our personality characteristics are different sort of like colors that we get to play with, like as we paint our own canvas, right? Hey Faith, how are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I didn't know, like, feel free to say hi if you're new to the chat. Um, but yeah, so I feel like that's what it is. Like, it's like all these different personality, human characteristics that we're having are just sort of like colors that we're playing into, that we're playing with, right? And as souls having this human experience, it's like this third stage of evolution. And I feel it's even like a fourth one, right? Where it's like we are consistently awakened and we are consistently being like totally in synchronicity, totally connect to our divinity, totally aligned with who and what we truly are. And we move from that place of intuition. We're moving from that place of inner knowing. We're not moving from fear, but we're moving from a place of love, right? And because we move from this place of awakenedness, from this place of inner knowing of who we truly are, naturally it's like our actions naturally create a positive ripple effect in the world. You see what I'm saying? So that's really powerful, and I guess I just sort of want to like invite you to look at your life in that way. What ways And what areas, feel free to pop it in the chat even as I'm live. What areas in your life do you feel like most sleep in? We all have certain areas in our lives that we feel like we're most sleep in. Like some of us, it might be health or eating. Some of us, it might be our relationships, or others, it might be like, money or career. Like what stages in your life or areas of your life do you feel the most sleep in? And it's usually those areas in our lives that we can bring the most compassion and love for ourselves in, right? It's like when you see a child fall off a bike or fall when they're trying to learn how to walk, you don't reprimand the child and say, you need to learn how to walk or you need to learn how to ride the bike better, right? Like, no, it's like, oh no, oh, this is this area in my life that I'm having these challenges in. And oh, isn't that interesting, right? This is a new area of exploration. This is a new area of expansion, right? Expansion of knowing who I truly am. Because challenges to me only represent, oh, this is an area of expansion, of growth, of opportunity to get to know more of who and what I truly am. This is an opportunity for me to recognize that, oh, my perspective is out of alignment with the perspective of my divinity, of the perspective of my soul. So I wonder what the perspective of my soul is in this area of my life, right? Instead of identifying with the mental stories and the mental movies that we have a tendency to do, in these areas of challenge that we might have, simply asking yourself, I wonder what my soul's perspective is on this, right? Like I wonder if my soul has a different perspective on this. Like if something is really challenging you, like what I wonder what my soul's perspective is on this. Like maybe, my soul's perspective is way more compassionate and loving. My relationship with people have changed and loss of close friends. Oh, how so? How so, Faith? What do you mean? Your relationship has changed and loss of close friends. That can definitely happen, especially when you're having a spiritual awakening. Like I said, we're all like on a path of different stages of our evolution. Like as a human collective consciousness, I feel like we're starting to get into that like child adolescence phase, but that's going to still vary like from person to person. And so it's not always easy, especially if you're like an extrovert and you really um kind of really sort of need that sort of friendship stuff. Not friendship stuff. I didn't mean to say it like that. If you and you need that camaraderie and friendship and connection with others, right? I'm totally an introvert, so I'm such a loner. But I still have my close friends and stuff. But yeah, when you're on the spiritual journey, you know, um, sometimes it can be lonely. It doesn't have to be, because there's so many people who are waking up on the planet who are awake. I'm pretty sure, if you're watching my channel, you've probably also watched other YouTubers or other spiritual teachers talk about this as well. But joining a community of like-minded souls, can kind of fill that gap, so you don't feel like you're on this journey alone. And even just having one other person to talk to. I remember when I first started my own spiritual awakening journey, it was definitely challenging to say the least, because I was like, I sort of actually end up distancing myself from my friends myself, just because I couldn't really. It was sort of like when you're a light worker or you're a light being and you start to awaken to who you truly are, your energy becomes a lot lighter. And so a lot of people who like to stay in that heaviness sort of weighs you down just by being around them. And it's not necessarily that they're bad. Like I said, they're just in their own little stage of consciousness, right? So it's like you have to find something as you're moving into your own stage of evolution of aligning with other and new people and new experiences that align with who and what you truly are. You see what I'm saying? And so it can be scary, because change is never easy, because changes can be scary, right? But it can also be fun, right? It's having new adventures, exploring new places, exploring new people, exploring new relationships, right? So I'm not sure if you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat and I'll try to answer it before I get off. But yeah, that's simply it. It's just like having more compassion for yourself and others while you're on this journey of evolution, of especially during these trying times, as people call it. I don't like to call it trying times. I'm fully in my own little bliss bubble, but that's because I created it that way. We are all creators of our own reality. As I always say, flow is what feels good and let go of what doesn't. But you are indeed a divine being and the creator of your own reality. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. Spiritual awakening and all that stuff doesn't have to be like dreary and painful and stuff. There are definitely moments of uncomfortability, moments of challenging experiences, but it can be joyful. It can be uplifting. I feel like the whole point of like a spiritual awakening or like flipping the lights on in a dark room is bringing light, bringing love, and bringing joy and excitement to your life more rather than this sort of like heaviness of darkness. And it's about like letting go of the pain and the heaviness and the old conditioning that has kept us feeling stuck, stagnant, and disconnected from who we truly are. Sorry, the wind is really blowing really hard. But yeah, it's about like connecting to who and what you truly are and allowing those things to arise. It's not about like ignoring the things that arise, the challenging experiences. It's not about tucking them away. It's about dealing with them as best you can at the level of consciousness that you can bring to it, right? And then just bringing love to it as much as you can, bringing compassion to it, compassion for yourself and compassion for others, right? Recognizing that not everybody's going to awaken at the same speed that you are. Not everybody's going to be awake in their lives. I take care of myself first, and my old friends know I'm a giver. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, yeah, Faith. That can definitely be challenging, especially if you're a natural giver. And I'm not sure if your friends were takers or whatever, or if it was like an even exchange of like energy, like reciprocity, like I said earlier. But yeah, that's a challenging one. I definitely say connect with yourself, connect with your soul, and sort of ask for guidance on that. Um, as far as dealing with those type of relationships because when you're in those type of relationships, and I've been in one of those type of relationships where you feel like you're giving more than you're receiving, it's never a healthy relationship. You can either address the relationship sort of head on and just kind of a lot of times, as givers, we have a tendency to give, and we don't express what we need in return. So sometimes it might just be you need to talk about what you need because they don't even know. They're so used to taking from you because you give so freely. You're a lover, right? You give so freely of your love and your time and your energy and money and whatever, but they don't even know that they need to reciprocate. So sometimes it's just voicing what you need. And then if there's like a schism there and they can't be able to provide for you, then it's a question of whether or not you feel that you need that relationship in your life, right? If that's really healthy for the life that you want to create moving forward, right? So it's not necessarily that we have to sever all ties with people who aren't awakened or anything like that, but it's about like just being honest and having honest conversations and um, talking about the things that you need. Um, so yeah, I'm just seeing the chat. Okay, but yeah, I think I'm done. Yes, mostly all are takers. Yeah. Have you? I'm curious. Have you ever voiced and expressed like your needs that you need in that relationship for you to feel like it's a win-win, like I talked about earlier? Have you ever like expressed personally, like that you definitely need certain things in order for you to have a healthy relationship? And if so, what were their responses? And if not, you know, curious to hear what your response is to that. But yeah, I think I'm complete with this conversation. That's mostly what I wanted to share with you guys is have more compassion for yourselves during these time. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming up, that's challenging because we're really breaking down old systems and old ways of doing things on the planet that no longer work. But it can also be a fascinating and a beautiful time because um, it's because we're like stepping into more of who we truly are, like it just makes me excited to think about it. Like to be more divine, to be more of who we truly are, like, and not to be in fear and scarcity and lack and to always be in this place of like feeling like we have to hoard or feeling like we have to protect ourselves or like shield ourselves from evil or all this other stuff that people do when they're in that state of fear, scarcity, and lack. But we can actually be in a state of love and expect good things to happen and move from a place of expecting miracles and expecting magic and expecting your life to be easy and fun and joyful, right? Like we're shifting into that new state of consciousness. And truly, it's a choice. It's a choice. Like you make that choice every day to be happy or to be sad. And a lot of times when people are asleep, um, they don't they aren't aware that they have that choice, but we do all have that choice, you know. And if you're watching this, if you watched any of my videos for a length of time, you know that there's some level of consciousness that you have, and recognizing that you are the creator of your own reality and recognizing that you have the choice and the power to affect the way your life flows means that you have the power to create more of what you desire, you know. um, I remember for like when I was talking about just kind of back to what Faith was talking about, it was like that friendship thing and feeling sort of lonely. It's not very often that I felt lonely, but I remember feeling last year when I got out of a sort of long term relationship, feeling super lonely, feeling like I didn't have any friends to talk to because I was so, you know, awakened and I couldn't really connect with anybody, like no one understood me. And then it was sort of like as I gave myself compassion, just allowed myself to go through life and let life do its thing, I started to reconnect with old friends and make new relationships, and things just started to naturally evolve, you know? Um, and because it was just sort of like I let life do its thing through me, I let my soul be the driver in in my own car of my life, that things just started to naturally blossom, and they're still blossoming, and the journey never ends as long as you're, you know, still in this human suit, you know. We're always evolving, we're always growing, and we're always changing, and it's not change is not always a bad thing, you know. It can actually bring a lot of good and a lot of beautiful experiences, new experiences into our lives. So yeah, I am complete with this conversation. The one thing that I did want to invite you to is my free smoothie challenge that I have going on. So if you are struggling with like low energy, if you are, you know, wanting to eliminate fatigue and burnout and all that good stuff, then definitely check it out. It's at sipofnature.com, sipofnature.com. It's a free 5-day smoothie challenge. So I have that going on right now. Feel free to sign up. You'll get 5 delicious recipes, more tips and tricks on how to boost your energy naturally, learning about you know, how to power your body and power your energy through the power of plants, and all that good stuff. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to go to sipofnature.com. I'll put the link in the description box below once I get off. But yeah, that's it. As always, flow with what feels good and let go of what doesn't, because you are divine. You are a divine being, Mosaic soul, and your soul knows exactly what you came here to explore and experience. So vibrate higher, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace, love, and light.